my mother couldn't recognize me with that voice.
Can you do any of it now?
Sure. Bonjour, Bernadette Lagrange à l'appareil. Vous allez bien? Je vous appelle de la part de mon patron, Monsieur Truesdale. Alors voilà.
Congratulations on Étoile. It's fantastic.
I'm really excited of the people's reaction. Really, it's beyond what I was hoping for. People really love the show, and I'm very proud to be in it.
When you were shooting this in Paris, did you find yourself translating for your co-stars?
Well, Luke Kirby speaks French,
Oh,
actually, even though he says he doesn't speak, but he does speak French. A lot of the people in Paris section of the story were French people, so I didn't have to translate. It's mainly Amy and Dan and some of the American crews that had to be helped at times, but it was pretty organic in the way everyone was very helpful and making everyone understand each other, and there was a lot of good vibes on that set. So yeah, no, it was not an issue at all.
Language sort of shows up early in your story when I'm researching it, because we'll talk more about Étoile in a minute. But I love the story when you were growing up in Montreal. You said you learned a lot of English from watching American TV with your grandmother, who would translate for you as the shows were going. What kind of shows were you guys watching?
Well, it was my grandmother's shows. It wasn't, any shows that I wanted to watch. But back then in the 80s, she would watch Dynasty and Not Landing and Dallas. And what else would she watch? Those were the three shows that I remember. So I would watch it with her, and she would just translate the big moments or reveal, or so that I could follow.
What was your grandmother's name?
Gabrielle.
Gabrielle.
Gabby.
And what would she say when she was translating? Was she translating dialogue for you, or was she saying like
dialogue?
Oh, really?
Dialogue and plot twists, like, oh, she blah 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 blah, or she just said that, or kind of like a mix. I was very, very close to my grandmother. She was my biggest fan. The first time I was on television, she was still alive, and she was at the hospital, and I went to see her. And as soon as I walked in the room, she said, "Can you please go get the nurse?" And I was like, yeah, of course. So I went and got the nurse. And as soon as the nurse walked in, she said, "Do you recognize him? He was on TV last night." She was so proud and so excited.
Right. You were worried. You were going, "Oh my God, why is she bringing the nurse in?"
Yeah,
oh,
yes, of course. Yeah.
The whole road to you becoming an actor at all is very interesting to me, because as far as I could tell, it sort of happened sort of accidentally that you auditioned for there was no plan to become an actor, and you sort of accidentally auditioned for theater school because someone needed a scene partner. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. A girl in high school asked me, and I was just like, first of all, I said no, because I was not an actor. And she kind of convinced me that it was easy. So she said, we'll just read it. So I guess I never actually learned those scenes. I don't remember. And I just decided to apply at the same time, because I was like, well, if I'm going to put in the work and the time, might as well just like apply. And so I got accepted, I got excited, but I was like, a lot of unknown. I didn't know what acting was about. I had not really seen theater before. It was a very strange moment in life where it was like a leap into the unknown, and I just happened to discover something that I actually had talent for, that I liked. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. And so it was a big moment. I really became who I am in that 3-year program, really.
What do you mean by for the first time in my life, I was seen?
I think when you're that age, I was 17 years old, I had a strange childhood. I was raised by my mom until I was 12. Then I was with my grandparents. I never had a dad. So throughout my childhood, I felt often like a second thought for people's reality. And to be in a program where I was front and center, and people were like, "Oh, you're good. What do you need? I felt, yeah, it was the first time in my life where I felt seen. I was like, oh, I have a place in this world. People actually care that I'm there, that I matter, that I have something to offer. These were all new to me.
Yeah, that's profound, though. That's profound.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's why it was a big moment in my life. It changed my life. I think I don't really believe in accident. I think this person who asked me was put on my life journey to bring me to where I was supposed to go. And I just very simply followed and I ended up where I was supposed to end up, I think. So, yeah.
Uh, Pretty quickly too, and this comes up a couple of times. I mean, first off, you booked your first acting gig while still in theater school, right?
Right. Yeah, because back in the 80s, there were literally no black people in Montreal on television except from Normand Brathwaite, who is mainly a host now, but he's done some acting at the beginning of his career. And then when I actually graduated from acting school, there was another a musician, Gregory Charles, who was another black actor. But when I was in acting school, there was only one person of color on television. So they had this hit show on CBC, Radio-Canada, and they needed the big reveal of one of the main characters. She's dating a guy. She brings the guy to the office. Shocker, it's a black guy. So they needed a black guy. So they made an exception because normally when you're in that program, you cannot work professionally. But they Radio-Canada called the school. They knew I was there. They asked for permission. And so that was my first job.
Yeah, I guess what it brings up for me is both like the excitement of getting a gig when you're not supposed to get a gig, but also like the I guess the realization that like, oh, this is the landscape for black francophone actors in Quebec, you know?
Yeah, it was interesting because when you're in acting school, you're kind of people are colorblind. You can play any part. I ended up playing in the third year Camille Claudel's brother, who obviously was white, and I've played all kinds of characters in Molière and all kinds of plays during my 3-year program, which never had anything to do with my color. So, and being from a white family, my mother's white, my father was black, but I don't know my dad. So I was raised in a white family. I never saw myself as a black person because everyone around me has always been black. So, yeah, I kind of see that the color, but you really have to remind me that I am not white in a weird way. And so it was kind of a shocker to me when I graduated, and then I wanted to be seen for all kinds of parts that I had heard about, and I was told, well, that character is not black. I was like, okay, why not? Well, he's just not black. It's a white character. And so it was kind of shocking to me and never kind of realized that this would be an issue. And then the actual market for me was very, very narrow. The first job that I got that the director chose to hire a black person when in the breakdown and in the description, it was not written that it was for black. Because back then, if it was not written in the script, this character was supposed to be black or Asian or whatever it is.
Then they were white.
They were white.
Yeah.
And so he shoots his scores, Lancé Compte. Richard, I'm forgetting his last name now, the director called me in for an audition, and I went in, and he told me on the spot, which is the only time it happened in my 36-year career now, he offered me the job. And the character was not for a black guy, and back then, I don't think there were black players in the NFL. I don't think.
In the NHL.
NHL.
There would have been one. Maybe there would have been one or two that I can think of. Grant Fuhr may have been a goalie at that point, but like other than that, very, very few. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, because it was kind of like a really refreshing job to have and situation to have, and I was like, oh, okay, it kind of cracked the little door that I was hoping would be wider open.
But also just a big door in general. I mean, Lancé Compte, he shoots, he scores. Became a pretty massive series. Did you have some idea of the potential of that? I mean, it must have been big role for a young Quebecois actor to get.
By the time I did it, the series had aired, and they did a series of 4 or 6 films uh, that were lancés quand j'ai this course, but it was a film. So I did the film version of that whole thing. I was not part of the series. So by the time I did the film, I was very aware that this was a huge hit. And back then, my nemesis in the story, I was like the antagonist of Roy Dupuis, who was a big deal at the time. So everything about it was a big deal. I was very intimidated because I had never played hockey and I didn't know how to skate.
Yeah, I read this that
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I
you
lied.
didn't tell them
Yeah,
that you knew how
yeah.
to that you didn't know how to skate because that
Because
would
at
have
the
kept it down.
audition, the audition, you had to fill up a form and do you know how to skate? Have you ever played hockey? And I said, yes, because otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to audition. And so I got the job, kind of forgot about that small detail because I figured, well, we're actors. I'm not going to have, but what they did is they had a rehearsal where they had all the cast that they hired on the ice to see the level of everyone, to see if anyone in there was good enough to kind of come across as a professional player. And I was very humiliated because I had to go around the ice, skating like a 5-year-old.
Yeah, holding
But
on to the
before I
net.
went on the ice, I went to talk to the director and he was busy. And I said, Richard, I really love to talk to you. And he's like, I'll talk to you after rehearsal. And I said, Richard, I don't know how to skate. So he turned. He looked at me and he said, do what you can. So I did what I could, which was not much.
And they brought someone in.
But at the end of the day, no one was good enough. So everyone ended up being dubbed for the games and stuff. So I kept the job. But I would never do that at my age.
Well, you were crafty back then. I mean, that's one story that stuck out to me, is you not telling them you couldn't skate when you auditioned for a hockey film. The other is you were. Let me see if I get this right. You were trying to put on a production of Le Cage aux Folles of the Birdcage, and you created an artificial French assistant named Bernadette. This is wild. Can you tell that story?
All true. I was wild. I don't know. I was young. It's a very famous actor back then. My first job when I graduated from the acting school was with André Montmorency. It was a collage of like French Canadian plays, and we did it for the Saint Jean Baptiste, the national celebration. And he really liked me as an actor, and we became friends. And he said, "You really should play Jacob in the Birdcage. You'd be so funny in that." And so he put that in my head. And I just ended up finding who the agent was in Paris. I called him. He took my call because he didn't know who was calling. And I think he took my first 2 calls, and I told him but I had no clue how to do this, right? I was 19 years old. So I told him I wanted to do a production in Quebec, and I had this person involved and this and that. But I think very quickly after the second call, he realized I was a kid and probably was just not interested in giving, it didn't feel like I had credibility, and I had very little because I was just this brand new actor. So I just was trying to find a way to get him on the phone to finalize the negotiation. And I was just like, hey, he's not going to pick up if I call. And I had this character that I did with my friends, Bernadette, who was my assistant. And I was like, let's just have Bernadette call. And she did, and he picked up.
Did you like raise your voice and talk like a?
Oh yeah. I have a French Parisian voice that I've been doing for 35 years. So I just did that voice. My mother couldn't recognize me with that voice.
Can you do any of it now?
Sure. Bonjour, Bernadette Lagrange à l'appareil. Vous allez bien? Je vous appelle de la part de mon patron, Monsieur Truesdale. Alors voilà, nous voudrions avoir les droits de la cage folle. But, there you go.
Your country thanks you, and also, your mom wouldn't have been able to recognize you, son.
No one did. So he picked up, and whatever she said was more convincing, and because she was French and she had the French accent and all that, I think he liked her better. And she also, it's a voice when I do it on the phone, it's a voice that reads a little older.
Yeah.
And he ended up faxing the contract, and I had the rights, and so I offered it to Denise Filiatro, who was the biggest deal at the time, the director, and we had an incredible cast, and it was my biggest hit at my career. It was I had praised reviews and incredible reviews, and that was very helpful.
I mean, it's an amazing story, right? Like you sort of accidentally find yourself in as an actor. You tell me that's the first time you really feel seen. You feel sort of validated. You feel confident. Big roles start coming your way. You're sort of sticking your neck out to making these big productions, which become big hits in Quebec. And then you could have stopped there and had a very successful career as an actor in Quebec. But then you go to New York, you study at the Strasbourg Theatre Institute, and then you, like a lot of actors, go to LA to make a go of it. And most actors have years and years of auditions trying to, if they're ever able to find that one big role. But your first audition ends up being pretty significant.
Yeah, it's Gilmore. Yeah.
It's the Gilmore Girls, your first audition.
Yeah, but it took a year to have that audition, a year and 2 months. I showed up in LA the previous year in November, right before Christmas. And I was in LA for a year without it being able to find an agent, getting a job, getting an audition, being quite depressed, running out of money. It's not pretty. Um, and so I had decided by my birthday, if I didn't have a clear sign of something, I would just go back home. And I got Gilmore a week before my birthday.
But at that time, was there any sense that it would become big? Like it must have just seemed
No.
like any other show.
Well, but for me, it was like my first job in Hollywood. I was incredibly excited, even just to do a pilot, because the chunk of money I made for the pilot was enough for me to live off for a year at that time. So I was just like incredibly grateful and excited. And then the whole process was all new to me. Like, then you do a pilot, then you wait. Then I heard, oh, we're picked up for 7. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then
I should tell you at this point that I watched it religiously as a kid. Like I watched
you
it.
did?
Yeah, I watched it. Me and my mom used to watch it every Sunday. I think it came on, right?
I don't recall.
Yeah, I think every Sunday my mom and I would watch it.
No, it was not on Sunday.
Tuesday?
I can tell you that. No, it was not on Tuesday, and it was not on Sunday because we were opposite friends. And
Thursday.
I believe Thursday. I believe it was on Thursdays. Yeah.
I remember watching it with my mom. We would sit down together and watch it, and I always loved it, and I loved the revival. So I'm a fan, and I got as a person who talks very quickly, I felt like it was a show for me. I remember Michel has this sort of very thick French, but like Parisian French, not Quebecois French accent. Who were you channeling for that voice? Anybody?
Well, again, remember, I've done Bernadette my whole life. So for me, the Parisian accent is a very easy accent for me to do for some reason. I don't know why. I'm pretty good with accents, actually. So it was just a very minor adjustment for me to do Parisian versus French Canadian.
I did hear that someone questioned your French ability. Your French,
yeah, that's funny. When I barely spoke English back then.
Is that right? Someone said like, "Oh, your French is terrible" or something like that.
I don't know. It was written somewhere that someone thought my French accent was not authentic.
You were like, "Hey, buddy, this is my first English role." So Gilmore Girls becomes a big hit. It puts you on the map as well as Lauren Graham and Melissa McCarthy. Feels like in what I've been listening to and getting and preparing for, you guys became a real family on set. A lot of actors were getting their big break at the same time. Mm-hmm. Tell me something about the atmosphere on the set.
The truth of the matter is Gilmore was a very complicated, difficult show to film because we didn't have a big budget back then. We also had an average of 25 pages more than your average 1-hour show of dialogue, but we had the same amount of days to shoot it, which is 10, which was insane because you basically added half of a normal script to the script already. And so we had days, I remember there's a day, I want to say we shot for like 26 hours straight. because we were always on overtime. We were always trying to finish the day and to finish what we needed to shoot every day. So it was very stressful for everyone on set, and it was a very difficult show. People were worn out, like it was brutal.
Is that because of the, for people who don't know, Gilmore Girls had an incredible fast pace of speech. I mean,
Yes,
Amy
yeah,
Sherman-Palladino believed that television spoke more slowly than people
hmm
spoke in real life.
that's right.
Is that why there were so many more
Yeah,
pages?
25 pages more of dialogue. That's to show you how fast we were talking there. Yeah, and it was still an hour show plus commercials.
So when you were done, well, let me
Yeah.
first ask this: were there pleasant moments? Were there?
Yeah. I'm making it sound. Well, it's just that people, I think, romanticize the show because it's such an iconic show, and a lot of us became friends and stuff. But I just like to put a little reality check in that experience, which was a beautiful experience. It changed my life. I made friends for life. Amy's been in my life ever since, and Melissa and Lauren and all the rest, and Kelly Bishop. But the reality of filming that show compared to Étoile, where we have time, money, the luxury of trying things and like analyzing and making choices and discussing it and rehearsal. None of which we had for Gilmore. So it's just two completely
Yeah, yeah.
different experiences. Yeah.
After Gilmore, are you doing other shows and films and being like, oh, this is easy? Like
Yeah, for sure. Also, I had a really hard time adjusting speaking with a normal rhythm. Like I would do another show and the director would come to me and say, you don't have to speak that fast, that's way too fast. But it was we were just so trained to have that pace that it took me a minute to go back to my normal pace.
some 2 decades later, Amy Sherman-Palladino, who is the creator of Gilmore Girls, reaches out to you to join her new show, Étoile, in the role of the French assistant director of the Paris Opera Ballet. What went through your mind?
To me, getting older as an actor, the most rewarding part of it is that you've worked with a lot of people, and over the years you end up creating some sort of artistic families, and the ability to revisit a family, an artistic family, with different material, different circumstances, older, all of that is such a privilege. It's such a blessing. I'm so grateful for it. So when she called, it's just really an amazing validation of our history, of our friendship. And again, I always go back to that, but of feeling seen. When someone wants to work with you again, it's because they got a taste of what you have to offer, and they're like, you know what, we'd like to have a little more of that. We'd like that. And that's, in a career, an acting career, you mostly get rejections. So when you have some validation sprinkled here and there, you're really appreciative of it.
I had heard that you had some sort of stipulation around your voice in the.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because the show Étoile is shot in Paris. The character is French, so of course when she described and explained what the show was about and the character, I was a little concerned because I didn't want to do another version of Michel, and I didn't want people to be confused that Michel is in Étoile, and so I suggested that we should drop the French accent for sure. And also, they created a different character, but they have a way of writing, and sarcasm and cynicism is in their writing. And I am who I am. So I just had to work in order to create a different dynamic with my leading lady, which couldn't be more different than Lauren Graham, Charlotte Gainsbourg. And so by starting to work a different dynamic and defining a different guy, I stopped being worried about it. But at first, I was a little concerned.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
You're in another Amy Sherman-Palladino show. Your character is French, from Paris again, and you want to make sure that that you're not repeating the past, and that the audiences don't get you confused with someone that you
Yeah.
used to be. I understand that for sure. I'll tell you this now. So when I came into this job, the art form. Now you might be surprised, given the beard. The art form that I knew the least about was ballet, and it's the art form that I've grown the most to appreciate from something I didn't know anything about. I'm just in awe of it. I was lucky enough to be invited by the National Ballet here to come see a couple of shows, and ever since I was just transfixed, and I've become a very, very big fan ever since, which is not something I had sort of expected from myself. And I read you talk about this show as a love letter to art and dance, and it needs all of our support right now. Tell me about that. What support does it need?
Well, it needs financial support, which is unfortunately is going down. I just think that uh, life is a challenging journey for anyone on this planet, and I just think that some elements of it that makes it sweeter, and it makes us feel more human, and it makes us feel connected to each other and to our true nature is art. And so, for me, any society that doesn't support art is a society that's going to be deprived from its of the core of who they are. It's art is at the center of one's identity. And so I just think the show, yes, it's a show about dance, it's a show about ballet. Like you, I share the passion for dance and ballet since a very young age. I'm not sure why. I just respect that discipline. I just find it incredibly beautiful. To me, they're kind of like athletes, but dancing. And it requires a dedication that is absolutely 100%. And by 35, they're done. I don't everything about it. I'm in awe of the passion behind it and the dedication. And it's also an art form that is away from what I do, so I can really absorb it without intellectualizing it. I just feel, and very few art form make me feel that way. So yeah, I think the show is very much a love letter to art, to being different, to celebrating differences, culture, different cultures, different point of views. And it's something very passionate about that love letter that I find when you watch the show.
It's an amazing story you told today, from going from hearing your grandmother, translate Dynasty to you, um, to finding yourself accidentally at the National Theatre School, to being cast in Gilmore Girls in your first audition. It's an amazing story now to this career now you've had.
Mm,
If your grandmother was still with us to watch how your career and life has turned out,
mm.
what do you think she might say?
Oh my God. I think of this so often, and I have to fight not to cry when I speak about my grandmother. But she would be, I don't have words. She'd be so excited. She'd be incredibly proud. Um, yeah.
She'd call all the nurses in, I'd say.
For sure, especially the fact that I have a career in the U.S. And she was French Canadian, but she did not watch French television for some reason. And so the fact that I have a career in the U.S. and an international career would just, I don't think she believed in me, but I don't think she could have imagined that I would have had the success that I've had. Yeah.
It's a beautiful story, Yanic. Thank you so much for telling it, and congratulations and everything. And here, on behalf of Canada, here we're proud of you up here. So congratulations on the show.
Thank you.